views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of Bronxnet or the program underwriters.
Good evening, book boos. You are now tuned into a Lip Bar virtual vibe. I am Noelle Santos, proprietress of the only brick and mortar bookstore in the Bronx and the baddest bookstore wine bar in the land, the Lip Bar. We are in for such a treat tonight because we are here to celebrate the launch of Reclaiming Your Community. You don't have to you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one by this beautiful lady next to me, Majora Carter. Majora, welcome and congratulations!
Oh, thank you! Oh my
God! No, Majora, this is the first time we've got like a live. You got like a live audience.
I do just a few really beautiful friends from so many different aspects of my life. Like it's crazy. It's just beautiful. So thank you.
I love to see it. I love to see it. For the two people in the world that don't know who Majora is, I am going to give you a little brief introduction, and then we're going to talk about your work, and we are going to celebrate. Majora Carter is a real estate developer, urban revitalization strategist, MacArthur Fellow, and Peabody Award-winning broadcaster. She is responsible for the creation and successful implementation of numerous economic developments, technology and green infrastructure projects, policies, and job training and placement systems. Her practice focuses on talent retention to reduce brain drain in American low-status communities such as her hometown, the South Bronx. She helps develop vision and strategies to transform low-status communities into thriving, mixed-use local economies, to increase wealth-building opportunities across demographics left out of this historic financial tide changes. She is also director for community regeneration at the solar equity organization Groundswell, and owns the Boogie Down Grind Cafe, where you are now recording from, right?
Yes, exactly. Live from the Boogie Down Grind. Hello. Yes. Live from the Boogie Down Grind.
How does that feel to, like, when you hear your bio, how does that make you feel to, like, just have some of your accomplishments just like heard out loud? How does that feel to you?
It's often an out of body experience because to me, I'm just trying to get some stuff done. And I realize like, wow, that chick's really getting some stuff done. And then I go, wow, that's me. It's kind of cool. Most of the time. It's actually
you are that chick.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me.
I love it. So we're here tonight celebrating the launch of Reclaiming Your Community. You don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. So this is the next thing that you want. So who are you talking to when you're saying to reclaim your community? Who are you speaking to?
Who am I talking to? I'm talking to anyone, well, two types of people. There's the people who are actually living in the kind of communities that I'm from, which is the South Bronx in New York City, that are often kind of dismissed, as the place where, you have to grow up and get out of these neighborhoods. And then I'm also talking to the folks who actually do the dismissing of people like from here and hopefully give them reasons to consider like actually working together to support like the reclamation of the communities by the people who live in them so that they don't have to move out of their neighborhoods to live in a better one.
Got you. So in a lot of my interviews, I spoke about that. I say that the Lip Bar was born out of, it was born in reaction to us, being our last bookstore being in jeopardy of closing. And that like stopped me in my tracks. And when I say stop me in my tracks, people were like, well, where were you going? I was like, I was gonna leave my community.
Yeah.
And and I got that phrase from you where I said I used to measure my success by how far I could get away from the Bronx. And I didn't put that into work. I didn't have the words for that.
Right.
I didn't know that's what I was actually doing. I just know that I wanted a different type of lifestyle. So in this book, you're
Selected.
you guys good over there with tech?
Yes. Hold on one second. What am I
Yep,
selecting?
no problem.
I don't know. What is it?
I don't know. Pick one.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, no worries. No worries.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
All right, go for it.
Yes. So, we're people from communities like ours. And also, let me just be clear. We call the kind of communities, whether they're inner cities or Native American reservations, or actually all white, maybe coal mining towns that used to have a lot of industry in them but don't anymore. We call them low status communities, not because of the status of the people that are there, but because there is an assumption of people from those communities that inequality is simply assumed in those neighborhoods. So if you happen to be like a talented one academically or artistically or athletically, you're going to be led to believe by your teachers, by your family, even by yourself, and certainly by outsiders, that you need to measure success by how far you get away from our communities. People like to think that brain drain is something that only happens in the developing world, but no, it happens right here in America, in American low status communities. And what that does, I think, is actually degrade, the social and economic, fabric of our community and our country as a whole. And it also means that we're leaving people to feel as though they have to leave our neighborhoods in order to do great things. And I'm not about that life, because I'm like, what about the folks who are in our communities that are allegedly left behind? And, honestly, I was deeply moved when I started to look back, at a time in American history when we were obviously really racially segregated, but economically diverse. And then when legislation came through and we were able to move out of our communities, to live better, first of all, didn't work out quite that way, but it also, I think, sort of cemented this idea that we need to leave in order to aspire to great things. And I feel like we want to change that narrative in support of people within those status communities.
So, one, I would like to say this book was so beautifully written. It was so beautifully written. There were certain points where I was forgetting that I was reading nonfiction. I was forgetting that I knew you in person. I can see the 1-inch afro on your head. It was so beautifully written. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how this writing process came, how this book came to be, and that the writing process.
What was interesting was that my publisher, which is Barrett Kohler Publisher, and Steve Prasante in particular, who is the founder of BK Publishers. I'd known him for years. He actually said, we'd love to talk to you about publishing a book. And this was like 8 years ago, I think. And I was like, yeah. And I was just super busy the whole time. And he was just like, the problem, Majora, that you have is that you probably at this point in your life got at least 5 books in you. The problem is going to be figuring out which one to write. And, and I didn't really get that. And then honestly, the pandemic happened. And then it was just like, well, what am I going to do? And, I'm a Black woman, so I'm always got 5 jobs anyway. So it was really difficult to just sit and not actually have the experience of always being engaged in doing something. So I sat myself down and thought about, what do I want to share? And, as I think reflect back on you asking me, what's it like when someone reads my bio? And even thinking back even further to how sometimes when other people hear my bio, they think that this is not something they could ever do in their own communities. I was like, no, yes, you can do this in your own communities. And I felt like I had to let this out, because I feel like we have got to stop playing defense in terms of the development of our own communities. We've got to recognize that like the way that we step up and decide that, we're not going to stick to like the status quo development that literally does not put us first, or, the kind of like what we call poverty level economic maintenance that happens in these communities that benefits lots of other people, whether it's highly subsidized government housing or, the prevalence of health clinics and pharmacies, because we definitely know that people in our communities have the kind of health issues that, again, makes pharmaceutical companies lots and lots of money. It was just like, are we creating the kind of value and love for ourselves and our own communities? And I really do feel like the work that I've been doing for the past 20 years was that. It was just like, I want a great place to live. And why can't my neighbors and friends and family have the same thing? Mm-hmm. And I wanted people to feel like they could do it too.
Well, I'm so glad that this has taken shape of a book. It's the book that I didn't know that I needed. I'm like the poster child for this ideology of talent retention strategy. Mm-hmm. And that can take shape in real estate or in book selling or
yes,
and across industries. So it can be applied in so many different various ways. I laughed with the book. I cried with the book. I threw it. And I picked it back up.
Good.
And it made me feel hopeful. And I want to like actually, dig into the content and, talk about that wave of emotions that it took me through without giving away too much, because I want everybody who's watching here to go out and get the book. A lot of people already bought books with their tickets. It was like, I think we were at like 170 something like that.
Awesome.
And I don't want everybody else to be spreading this message. So I'm not going to make this about me, but I just want to give a quick introduction to myself to anybody who's not familiar with me. I'm the owner of the Lip Bar, and the Lip Bar was born out of response to the last bookstore in the Bronx closing down. We're a community of 1.5 million people. We have 10 colleges, and we only had one bookstore. So I signed a petition to save that last bookstore from being displaced. And I wasn't satisfied with just signing the petition. I was like, how did we even get here? Between all the politicians and the developers and the actual bookstore corporation, which was a Barnes and Noble, like all the adults, like they're supposed to do something about this. Like, how did we even get here to have one bookstore? How do we even get here? So I decided that, since the adults couldn't figure out what to do, that I was going to do something myself. And I didn't even know up until that point that was the only bookstore in the Bronx, and that the Lip Bar would be, just the second one. We ended up being the only one. Because up to that, I didn't even know that. I was like in my own little bubble, because in my mind, I was going to get my education, move out the hood, get my money up, buy my mother a house, the stereotypical, you get out. But it was that at that moment that I started feeling like a coward. Like I would be leaving my community in no better condition than I left it in.
And nobody would blame you. Okay, but please keep going. Please keep going.
So, I didn't even start on this. This was not a dream of mine. I didn't know that book selling was a career path for me. I didn't know that was an option. My dad used to bring home the Chief, like that old newspaper. I don't know if it still runs every week, and you apply for the admin jobs, and you work your way up. Like I didn't even know that book selling was a career opportunity, because I never set foot into an indie bookstore before I decided to open one.
Wow.
And it's just so I'm basically like the poster child for this ideology of talent retention, and that strategy, helping for our communities like ours in the South Bronx to progress. and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know that what I was doing would be controversial. I didn't know that what I was doing would be inspiring other people to, inspiring a movement. Like when I moved here, there was nothing on my block. Right. Now it was like all these restaurants and, this buzzing economy going on over here. Some people call it progress. Some people call it gentrification.
Right.
And I want to get into that because you talk about your fan club in the book. Can you tell the people who is the Majora Carter fan club? Who does that group comprise of?
Right here we are.
So the people here are my real fan club, but I use fan club in the book rather euphemistically, because look, I don't like applying hate anywhere near all this. I'm sorry, no. So I use it to describe my haters, because I really do think they send me so much. It's like I think they all have crushes on me after a while. It's like you gotta love this. I mean, sorry, but they're my haters, and I got a couple few, and so yeah, they're my haters.
So I wanted to
I
wanted to give some context to the term fan club so everybody understood how we were using it. When you give us the glossary at the beginning of the book.
I do.
But I just want to make sure everybody.
No, I know. I didn't try to wait for people to figure it out. It was like, look, y'all need to understand what this is right now, please.
Yes,
okay,
this
thank
is
you.
the Majora Carter fan club. So those are Majora's haters. And it's unfortunate that they had to have such a wealth of knowledge, so much experience. It's so unfortunate that you have to censor them. But because one of the goals of the book, I believe, is to inspire the next generation.
Yep.
To make them aware of the types of challenges that they are going to face, and make them feel like less alone, and know that somebody has already experienced that. And navigate that in a different way. It was important to kind of censor the adversity that you faced. So I would like to just talk about how I met Majora. So girl, the last time my face was next to your face on a flyer, my life fell apart. And it came back together in the most beautiful way. Just stick with me here. So I had this grand idea to open the Lip Bar. I didn't have any money, no experience. I never worked in retail before. I never worked behind a bar, nothing. So, I was just meeting people. I would talk to anyone and everyone. And there was a group of activists in my community, some of them members of Majora Carter's fan club that I would learn. But those were my supporters. Those were the people who were, writing blogs in my community and talking about, we can change the world. And I'm just like, yes. And these were my supporters. And then Majora Carter reached out to me. I didn't know what a Majora or Carter was. It was Halloween. It was how fitting. And I think I was 28 years old, and I'm 35 now. So y'all do the math. What's that? 2016, something like that. So, Majora tweeted just in support of me, and I was like, thank you. Let's go. I still didn't make the connection. Then I got a message on Facebook from one of the president of your fan club, and he was like,
we don't say the name. No,
we don't say names. The president of your fan club reached out to me, and he was like, this woman, Majora Carter, she's dangerous. You stay away from her. And I was like, oh, that's the woman that shouted me out on Twitter. But I never thought anything of it. Then coincidentally, you had reached out to me, and because of his message, he sent me the link to a New York Times article speaking about you. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a sec. He
Not
sent me a link
up.
to, he had sent me a link attached to the warning, and I read the article, and it read like a shade room article, like it was gossipy. And then I was curious, and I was all involved. It was all juicy. I was like, ooh, her white husband, ooh. We love you, James. So I fell down the rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole included your TED Talk. And then I started, I was continued to fall down the rabbit hole, and I started to like read up on all of your work, the organizations that you have founded and run, your work in environmental justice. And I'm like, yeah, she's bad. She's a bad bee. And that's how I was introduced to Majora Carter. So thank you to the fan club for introducing me to you, because had I not gotten that warning to stay away from you, I would have never learned about, I would have come across it eventually, but that was the catalyst. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not just opening a bookstore. I'm part of this movement. So, so thank you to the fan club for introducing me to you, and and your work. I can't imagine. The reason I say that it was my life fell apart is because I went through a period of grief. Because I was, and once I found my tribe, people who were like-minded. And then I found myself being ostracized from that community, that activist community that I looked up to. I'm opening this bookstore for you. Yeah. And I found myself being ostracized from that community just by being seen with you.
Yeah.
And being seen with you, that, you had invited me. Oh yeah, once you told me to stay away from somebody, now I'm gonna go do the event. So I did, so I did the event with you. It was called the Self-Gentrification Salon. Mm-hmm. Or saloon.
Salon. Although we should be careful, but it was salon.
Self-gentrification salon. And I was dared not to participate. I was like, okay, now I'm gonna go. And it was my first time speaking to Majora, and I said, Majora, the only way I'll participate is if it's okay for me to express to you my issues with the term self-gentrification. And you invited me to come and say, and speak my piece. Why this at the time, it was a term that you embraced. You had always acknowledged that it was a term that you didn't coin, but it was a term that you embraced, that just kind of reflects your ideology. And I took some issue with the term self-gentrification. I said, if I'm allowed to say that, then I will participate. And that's one of the things that I always respected about you, is that I've never seen you shy away from uncomfortable conversation. I've always seen you be open and willing to have the dialogue. So whether our ideologies align or not, we'll get into that in a second. But I've always respected that. You've always been open. You've always been ready to discuss this, because it's okay that we have different viewpoints. This is all new to us. This is scary. Gentrification has real life consequences. Like this is really, this is scary stuff. So that is how I met Majora, and I've wanted to have this conversation publicly for a long time. But me having a startup, and then 10 months after we opened, we shut down because of COVID. And now I got time. I have the resources to support this work, and to let it be known that I'm here for talent retention strategy. But my question is, my first question is talent retention strategy just a rebranding of self-gentrification?
Well, so just to explain to folks who don't know, talent retention is something that an approach that we borrowed from the business community, because just hear me out, especially for those of you that are entrepreneurs there in the audience, because I know there's a bunch of y'all. If you own a company, you build a business from scratch, and you hire your people, and you pour resources into them, professional development, training, all sorts of stuff, benefits, whatever. And, are you hoping that they go work for somebody else? That is essentially, so when we think about low status communities, what we actually have is essentially a talent repulsion experience where these communities and, the nonprofit industrial complex, our government kind of looks at these places, as the places where, if you're talented, what we're going to do is extract you from these communities. There'll be gifted and talented programs. There'll be all sorts of places, that give you the opportunity to get out because you don't belong there. But what that does is it leaves our communities open for the kind of predatory speculation, over policing, all sorts of things that we all know, have an impact on our communities in a very negative way. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that a talent retention approach to community development, one that essentially, first of all, looks at the people in our communities as the most valuable resource that needs to be preserved and supported and loved and given every resource and opportunity to show that it can actually create the kind of belief in their own capacity for their own economic and social recovery. I would never say that talent retention is going to solve gentrification, but I know good and daggone well that gentrification will never be solved without talent retention. No one's coming here to save us.
That's right. So that was the catalyst for that was the catalyst for me starting this venture, was that I realized that nobody was coming to save us. So I was gonna have to do something, no experience, no nothing. Mm-hmm. And sorry about that. The counter argument there is okay, we retain the talent, and in your book you talk about the surveys that you've conducted through all of throughout your career, and the talent that we want to retain. Everybody is saying that what we want is our lifestyle upgrades. Mm-hmm. So when we bring these lifestyle upgrades to our communities, and we are when we bring these lifestyle upgrades to our communities, we inherently just kind of attract a more affluent population to now see the value in our communities. And they start moving here. And as a byproduct, the, rent increases and, everything increases. And now the existing population who was there, they're now displaced. So what do you have to, what is your response to anyone who says that, self-gentrification or talent retention strategy, or, are we just displacing? Is it okay that, excuse me, let me get my words together. When we think of gentrification, we think of affluent white people moving into a community. Is it now okay because affluent Black people and people of color are now moving in, staying in the community or moving into the community and displacing these people? Does it matter who's doing it? Gentrification is violence, no matter who's committing that. So what is your response on how we grapple with that? How do we reconcile that?
Well, I think there's a lot there, number one. So a couple things. I think I would point people to some research, from Lance Freeman, who actually there's a whole body of research, where it does look like some violent displacements happening, but it's often a lot more subtle than that. And sometimes the people that do stay for a number of reasons actually do better, when the actual, economic trends within the community do change. A lot. So that's Lance Freeman. I would definitely take a look at that. But then there's also the thing that, again, not trying to solve, I can't solve every problem. And that's an interesting thing that I think also happens to people like me, they started grassroots, whatever. We're expected to solve every problem everywhere. And it's just kind of and I think Black women are magic, but, there's a limit and to everything that we do. But the thing that we're trying to do is it's really sort of to take and preserve a piece that's already here, okay, that we've been watching sort of get diminished by years and years of folks believing that, well, first of all, I think that when we start to think about that, gentrification starts to happen when you see cute cafes and doggy daycares, in a place where they weren't before. Or really like fancy bookstores.
Okay. Those are the final stages of gentrification.
Yeah, you think that's like the final stages of it, right? And I just want to state for the record, here in the South Bronx, bookstore, cool cafe, doggy daycare, run by, doggy daycare, a Puerto Rican and gay couple, from the Bronx. Hello, bookstore lady, Black chick here. From this really award-winning cafe. So I just want to be clear, who's doing this? Number one, we like nice things too, and we like to build them, and we do it well. So let's acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So let's just get that out there. But the other thing, I almost forgot where I was going. But the other, now where was I going? Lord have mercy, total senior moment. Oh yeah. So listen, gentrification doesn't start to happen when you see things like that. It starts happening when we believe that there's no value in our community. That's when it starts to happen. So I feel like I'm coming in so late in the game that it's just sort of half the time, so much has already happened. So for example, the fact that in Hunts Point alone, we used to have a decent home ownership rate. It's less than 7%. Why? Because we believe many of the people that sell their homes, and we know this because most of the deals are actually all cash, which means it wasn't a family in the neighborhood buying a property. It was predatory speculators understanding and assuming, because they were right about it, that the people that are from these communities don't know the value here, so that somebody else comes and takes it. And it's not, are they taking it or are we giving it away? Mm-hmm. So first of all, can we create the value? Can we acknowledge that there's value without selling it to somebody, and then get upset when we realize that we're not actually retaining the same value that, guess what, those predatory speculators are buying, and they're sending their kids to college with it. Mm-hmm. I do think it's important, as we think about, it's a narrow lane that we're trying to impact here. First of all, helping people understand, recognize the value that the reinvestment, holding on to families' property, actually trying to build the kind of things that people in our community are leaving to experience and spend their money somebody else's community. Why would we not want to create those kind of virtuous cycles of economic development within our own community that's being built by us? Why would we not think about an ability for our own? Why do we have to actually feel that the only place that we can do well is if we actually believe the kind of things that the nonprofit industrial complex tells us, that sort of poverty is a cultural attribute in our communities, that we can't think about any other kind of development except the kind that only supports and services the very low income folks, because we're believing that. Mm-hmm. We know people leave our neighborhoods. It's not just people who are displaced, by poverty. Although, if you also look at the data, actually very low income people are always moving a lot and being displaced often by other poor people with various public programs. Is that considered displacement? No?
That's something to think about. Whenever I see these housing lotteries for affordable housing, one, I look at the income limits, the income requirements, and I'm like, this is affordable for who? This is not reflective. I think they use all of New York's median income and not the area's income. So what happens is that you have people from outside communities, poor people from other communities. I never looked at it like that. They're pushing, they also qualify for affordable housing in the Bronx. So that's a form of displacement. Right. But I wanted to put my attention to the actual talent that we are, that we're trying to retain. I find myself walking this very fine line of where the lit bar is part of this ecosystem. I don't absolve us from being part of this gentrifying force. We just the fact that I exist makes this a more desirable neighborhood to live in. And once this is, the economic forces that be, more desirable neighborhood to live in, the prices go raise up. So that's just the fact, that's just the byproduct of
That's
just
real
me
estate.
existing. Just me doing something as Black as I'm doing it, it doesn't matter.
Right. But would you feel better, if more people like us from our communities were actually the ones benefiting from it?
I want us to have a stake. I want us to have a stake in the change, but I want to see a greater rate of us bringing people with us. Like how many Majoras?
Do you feel like you don't bring people with you?
Oh, absolutely. But it just feels like I'm doing something at such a small scale. Like I have between 4 and 6 employees at any given time. Mm-hmm. So those are the people who I'm directly creating jobs for. So I think about that. It goes back to what you said. I just want to save more people. And it feels like sometimes I wonder if my brand is part of this gentrification force, and I'm conscious about who I partner with. Mm-hmm. I did not take. It took me 5 years to build this business because I wouldn't just take the first lease that was offered to me. I wanted to make sure that I partnered with a landlord that had some roots in this community before it became the hot new thing, in the media. And I wanted to, make sure that I did things as conscious. Is there a way? Is there a way that you can just kind of stay clean?
Look, I feel like everything that I've done and have been doing, has been in direct service of my community and support of it. And, I've taken both, hits on my own and financial and otherwise that really created the kind of, I think what has helped other folks feel that they could actually do things as well. And so listen, but if all of us had the same kind of entitlement programs that white folks had since the 1600s, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. We wouldn't be having this discussion, but we didn't. So some of us have to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I am not going to apologize to anyone for getting caught trying to show that there's possibility for any of us to step up and not believe this narrative that we are less than and that we don't deserve anything other than the impacts of concentrated poverty in our communities, because that's what really, and then only the special ones get out. I'm one of the special ones, and so are you.
So do only the special ones, are we okay with only the special ones having a stake?
No, the whole point is, just you think about it, going back to, the unintended consequences of integration, right? Racially segregated communities by law, but they were economically diverse. Out of that, came the civil rights movement that actually did create some really incredible stuff that we all benefit from. But one of the unintended consequences was the fact that when that legislation, what's powering? Okay, no, I'm not worried about that. When that legislation hit, it was like, oh yeah, there's equality in housing. You could go wherever you want. And, people that the ones who passed the paper bag test were like, okay, we out. We're going to go live with the other people with the white picket fences and we're going to be good. But what happened to our communities? We can do something different. I don't want to spend all the gifts that I got in somebody else's community. I don't. And I also want other folks in our own communities to understand that they have gifts that they don't even know they have because they've been led to believe that they don't exist. And that's coming from a place, where our education system is less than. The healthcare system that we have here, it is not in service of us. And honestly, I might as well be talking, about folks that are on Native American reservations and even poor white folks. I mean, I spent some time in Appalachia. They're just darker. I mean, no, we're darker, but it's a hot mess. And I'm tired. I am really tired, of actually feeling as though that, we don't deserve to have the same kind of beautiful lives within our own communities. And that we should feel and I think that is honestly, the net result of some of the legacy that comes from white supremacy, where it's we wonder, and though Majora Carter is not authentic because she's trying too hard to be somebody she's not. I am a brilliant Black woman in my own community. And this is where I want to shed my brilliance.
Yes.
Now, what is wrong with that? Why is it considered weird? Why do we?
I think it's part of we, as in some people who are still navigating this topic, have kind of internalized, we've kind of internalized, I want to be great, but not in my community, but not too loud for the white people to hear me. And I mean, affluent, people. And I, when I opened the Lip Bar and I told people the concept that would be a bookstore and a wine bar, that was their first, that was their first,
it was brilliant.
Connection was oh my God, that's so white, in the South Bronx. And I'm well, I was raised, it was natural to me. That's the kind of culture I was raised in at home in the,
Yeah.
I'm from Soundview, y'all. But
yeah, she really from Soundview. Okay.
From Soundview, but it was natural to me that books and wine. I'm what's wrong with that? But that was a lot of people's response was oh my God, that concept is so white. And I wanted to change that narrative that books, that literature is reserved for someone that is not us. And that's what helps me sleep at night. That's what, propelled me. I would not have launched the project if, I wasn't able to do it in good conscience. But it's something that I continue with. I'm always studying is where's that line? And especially as we see the neighborhood starting to change. And sometimes I'm working in the back on my laptop at the shop and I look up and I'm these don't look like the people I set out to serve. And it's a pill to swallow. But at the same time, I stay true to I think about how much money I'm giving back to my community. I'm thinking about the jobs that I'm creating. I'm thinking about all of the little girls that say, oh my God, I want to be a bookstore owner now, when I didn't even know until that this was a career option for me until I was 28 years old. Yep. I keep that at the forefront and not
that is your
criticism
job.
Not the criticism, and I'm self-critical. I've internalized some of that criticism.
Of course.
So that's why I think this book is just such a great resource because it's helped me put the words to. It's helped me put the words to this.
Yeah.
Charger. So I wanted to talk about. Sorry, I want to plug in, make sure my laptop has some juice. There we go. So I wanted to talk about developing responsibly. For me, I can speak as an entrepreneur. For you, it's the real estate space now. Mm-hmm. Majora Carter, real estate developer. I like the sound of that. Who would have thought?
Not me.
But I wanted to talk about developing responsibly. One of the things I touched upon was I was really conscious about who I partnered with to, as a landlord. It wasn't one of these new, landlords that were offering market rate deals. Not that was a bad thing. It was just not for me and didn't align with what I wanted for my mission. But how do you go about vetting the partners that you work with? And do you have any advice for entrepreneurs on how they decide who they partner with, and how do you kind of figure out whose mission aligns with yours? Should you even be looking to see if your mission aligns with these people? What is that test? If there is a test on when you decide to work with people?
Look, I gotta tell you, I'm as a Black female developer who had some very particular, who still has and will continue to have some very particular ideas about, what I think is important in terms of communities. Like, I'm not interested in doing like only affordable housing for just low income bands. Like, I think we need more economic diversity in our community.
Yes.
Why?
Who's building
Because
housing for us so that can move out of my low income housing and free it up for somebody who really needs it.
Exactly. Like, why don't we have opportunities for more people who are from our communities? Like, and I'm not even talking about like folks from coming up from Park Avenue. It's just like, people from our own communities whose parents do all the right things to support their children. And housing and they go to college and they do fine. And they want to come live next to their parents because they got a baby, and it's like they'd rather, abuela and titi take care of their kids rather than a daycare center. But they're not building, housing, for people that are like professionals in any way. I'm talking like essentially a bus driver, and a teacher. So if we're not building stuff like that or workforce housing in our communities, we're doing a disservice to, I think, our own communities. So as far as like finding folks, that's, especially from what I've seen, in New York, it's been really hard. Like, I have not partnered with anyone in this town. So not since, we initially first planned for a project over here that didn't happen because the city was not trying to do mixed income housing in a community like Hunts Point, because they just would prefer to continue to concentrate poverty because that's how it rolls. So I wasn't surprised. And that's why I've worked more outside of New York City in order to make that kind of projects happen. But as far as like the kind of work that we do, I mean, being mission aligned, is really someone who actually goes like, wait, this actually makes sense. And we want to see more of that happen. We want to see businesses develop from the inside of a community. We recognize that there's talent within this community who are the new entrepreneurs and who might need a little bit of support. So finding folks who do that, again, it can totally happen, but I haven't experienced it here just yet. I mean, I'm hopeful that it'll happen, but it hasn't just yet. And that's okay, because, the kind of other things that we're doing, we think are very responsive, to what the community, is needed. And we asked folks, a lot of them, like, why do you leave the neighborhood? Where do you spend your money? Like, where do you happily spend your money? It wasn't here. Again, enriching someone else's community. So to us, and we're the sole developer, whether it was the Boogie Down Grind Cafe, Bronxlandia, which is going to be an event hall that we're restoring. It's an old historic rail station that we're going to be working on, within this year. I think we did a beautiful launch last December. We had a pop-up shop during the day, and Malik Yoba screened a couple of his documentaries there during the evening. And then we had this like hip hop and rock concert, like literally till like 2:00 in the morning. It was amazing. So, but the thing is, like, giving, an opportunity for people to showcase their talents. To me, that is how we support our local community. And, and giving people options, to even participate, in the economic development, which is something that I've not had an opportunity to do, in any of the deals that I've worked on or tried to work on, here. Like, for example, we're doing, crowdfunding investment, platforms, which gives people an opportunity to literally invest in the real estate development projects that we're working on with the same rate of return, even if they're just putting in $200 as someone who's putting in, $2 million. So again, these are the kind of opportunities. So I'm like looking for partners in different ways. That is how I'm different. And because I feel like if we can share the kind of opportunities that people see the value of investing in their own community, those were opportunities that were actually denied to me. And I don't want to do that to folks in my own neighborhood.
You in the book you talk about one of those moments that that you were denied. I wouldn't even call it denied. I would say ignored. Um, and it was when you first set out to open what is now Boogie Down Grind. First of all, that is such an amazing space. I don't feel like it's talked about enough. I see a lot of my artist friends.
Yeah.
I see a lot of my artist friends, going over there, and it's not just a coffee shop. It's it's not just a coffee shop. It's amazing community space, art space, performance space. And the way y'all have spilled out onto the streets and actually engage in the community is absolutely incredible. And we, the Lip Bar is like 10 minutes away from Boogie Down Grind, and we could feel that energy here. When y'all have events, it spills this way. It's like, what, this energy, how can we keep this going? And they come over to Alexander Avenue and we keep the party going.
Hello.
So I just wanted to just shout out to Boogie Down Grind and the work that you're doing there. But the Boogie Down Grind, that was not the original name. Originally, you had reached out to a Starbucks to come partner with you on this coffee shop endeavor. And that was what made me throw the book, Majora. Because yes, I see Boogie Down Grind and now and the impact that it's having, and I know of you, before Boogie Down Grind, and I understood what your values were. But then when I read in the book that had they answered your email, had Starbucks responded to your email, that could have very easily been, we could have very easily lost what we see today to that. So that kind of
we still could. I mean, seriously, we still could. I mean, I live in terror of a Starbucks opening near here.
You live in terror of a Starbucks opening near there. Is that like a new so like why reach out to them?
No, at first, because people were leaving the neighborhood for things like Starbucks. We saw plenty of it in the trash in here. People would go to either Parkchester or 125th Street and get Starbucks because they liked having the brand of Starbucks. There was no specialty coffee here, right? And then, so initially I sent an email, nothing, then met somebody from Starbucks, and he was just like, no, that market's too emerging. And we partnered with Birch Coffee to do the early version of what became the Boogie Down Grind. And oh my God. And then when I ran into that same Starbucks guy again, like a year later, Boogie Down Grind was out, and he was just like, yeah, we think that there's a market there now. We started that market. But the thing that I live in terror of, is that little like thing that happens, when, especially I think communities of color, we're so used to being considered less than, that when something that's like a brand or a dominant part of the dominant culture comes in, that's what we will be more attracted to. Because I'm just a chick from around the corner. So those are the kind of things we have to check ourselves on.
Like, was that a shift in consciousness from that point when you reached out to them to partner with you on the coffee shop endeavor to today? Is that something that you've changed? Because the way it looks like to me is like I'm retaining the talent. Yeah. And then once you retain the talent in the community, the homegrown talent rolls out the red carpet for these corporate interests whose values don't align with ours. And I'm like, give me a second. Go ahead. And I'm like, maybe that's what's fanning the fan club. That's what's fanning the fumes over there. Because it's kind of contradictory, no?
So do we blame Starbucks, or do we go back a little deeper into the fact that maybe we're not respecting the value that we've created ourselves in our own communities? Are we believing that lie that anything we produce is somehow deficient? Now, I know that, creating, this thing called the Boogie Down Grind, was literally a love letter to my community, because I know good and daggone well the talent that's here, and that so many people leave our neighborhood and to show it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why is everybody like spreading their light someplace else? Could we like concentrate a little bit here? And that's why we did it. And people were looking around like, oh my God, like there's so many cool people in my neighborhood. Like I didn't even know it because of here. A Starbucks wouldn't do that. They wouldn't.
Absolutely.
But
they wouldn't do that. So that's why it's kind of confusing to like when we invite them to the barbecue, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, initially, what else could I do? I mean, I didn't think they were just like, people were like, we like things like Starbucks and coffee shops. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can help get him one. We had a nice cheap lease. If we could bring them in, great. And then they didn't want to come. Nobody else did either. So we were like, we'll open up a coffee shop. Mm-hmm. And that's why we did. I mean, I like coffee, but I can't believe we did this. But to be honest, I mean, I'm delighted that we did, because it's just because of what it means to what you get to feel the residue of it as it travels across to you, because that is what it means. But I do really believe also on some level, like unless we recognize like on a bigger scale, that it's not just the Boogie Down Grind, right? Because that we just did. It's more about, are we taking our own communities so seriously that the people that are in them, are, have been, and we're the Bronx, we always been creating it, right? But do we retain it for ourselves, for our own benefit, to reuse for us to build on, to build that generational wealth and love and all and respect? Or do we think like, okay, no, we got to take what we got and then move so that somebody else can come in and benefit off of that? That's really all it is. Because, gentrification doesn't start when you start seeing things that weren't there before. But if we're not seeing the value and continuing to reinvest in it, then we will always be open and vulnerable to others coming in. And that's the difference. I mean, the talent retention community development approach is like, first of all, acknowledging that we got what we need. Yeah, could we have some more resources? Absolutely. Like it cracks me up to think like, man, if I'd been a white man, I'd be amazing. I mean, I'm amazing now, but I would have been financed. That's what I would have been.
So do you believe in like finance by like any means necessary to fund these projects? So when we put out the tickets for the event tonight, we got a lot of questions. We allowed people to ask questions, and a common thread is like, how do I do this without any money? I have the talent. I'm homegrown. I'm the person that you're saying you want to retain, but I don't have any money. I don't have mentorship. And so should we be considering, how do we consider who we align with so that we can get the funds? Should we allow these financing partners to have stakes in our businesses? Basically, where do we draw that line so that we can maintain the authenticity in our businesses? Right. Because had you partnered with Starbucks, Boogie Down Grind would be a whole different culture today. Right. And that's something that we want to, that I hope that we want to avoid to maintain that authenticity. So what advice my question is, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs who have, all these corporate interests reaching out to them, and developers, everybody's, wants to have all these diversity and equity and inclusion things now that the country has gone through this racial reckoning after George Floyd. Everybody has a department of this and that. And they just want to kind of use our culture as the face. Right. To, check these boxes and satisfy these diversity initiatives. what is your advice for entrepreneurs on vetting these potential financing partners? Because yeah, you can have the talent, but if you don't have the mentorship or the financing, how do you actually bring it to life?
Right. And that's real. I mean, it's probably it is definitely one of the reasons why I'm broke. I'm not quite broke, but not whatever. But because I didn't have that, it was just like I knew that I wanted to build something that was different from this, sort of like poverty level economic maintenance that kept being like thrown at us, and certainly wasn't gentrification either. And I didn't really have, with the kind of support to get us to the point where we could actually start doing that, with very few exceptions. And so we're trying to like create those types of opportunities where we can actually build that. But I do believe that we do have to get so better educated about money and how it works. Because the thing is and I know people don't like hearing this, but, and I'm sure, like people way smarter than me or my fan club, try to, dismantle capitalism. But I'm not sure if that's going to work. So what we need to do is like know how it works. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I do talk about, again, is it's like I can't like solve all the problems, but like I do know a few things, like within the context of like communities like ours, if we just hold on to property. Don't just sell it when like some nice guy, calls you on the telephone and says, oh my goodness, I can help you, like take this, the tax problems off your hands. Because he's not thinking about your family's generational wealth. Or when someone does try to, milk your brain, for the all the talent that's in it, but doesn't, think that they need to like support you with like real equity. But if we don't know what those things even mean, then we get screwed. But if we do, then we can make a real educated decision. And the problem within our most of our neighborhoods is we're not even given an opportunity to even understand what those educated decisions are. And I've been in those places as well. So that's where we have to, the things that like help get white people in America, why the wealth gap is as big as it is because there were some whole support systems that got them there. We could use those too. So, I mean, I guess I don't know. I feel like this racial reckoning thing hasn't really happened. Because if you look at, the numbers of folks, whether they're, in the kind of tech jobs or big jobs, I mean, we're getting in and things are moving in a bunch of different ways. But I still feel like first we just have to like recognize on the ground that just holding on to where we are is that is like the first stake in the ground. It's the first stake, because it's real easy, I think, for us to just sort of think like, well, if you can't boil an ocean, but you can like manage a place where you are, like with a cup of water, right? You can do that, and that's where we have to start. Because I feel like being asked, held to a standard in which it's like if you're not doing everything, then you're doing nothing. It's just like, why would we do that to anybody? So, I mean, I love the fact that you took a passion, books and wine, and put it together and are using it to inspire and encourage like all sorts of folks, but in particular, people that do look like you, mm-hmm. Right? And to show you that this is, and I know good and daggone well, somebody walks in to your spot and goes, I really do think I could run a bookstore somewhere. You share.
The impact is way louder than any of the criticism, and that's what drives me to keep pushing.
Right.
Absolutely. I guess I wanted to speak to the people who are up and coming, the people who are in the audience, that is it inevitable? Do we have to does the money just, should we be taking it from anybody that we can get it from to bring these things into fruition?
Look, I've had one of my mentors, when back in the day when I was an activist, and we'd have these like theoretical conversations because wasn't nobody trying to give me any money anyway. But she's just like, do you think you could do better, with some money that came from a place that you didn't really like and then actually do some good with it? Is it possible? And I was like, well, yeah, it's possible. But, do I really want it? And it's a personal question that you have to dig. But, bottom line is there such a thing as anything clean? No. I mean, you're going to have to dig real deep for that. And when you find it, let me know and share. But I don't really see that. And again, it's just this. I feel like these are the kind of questions that we'll ask ourselves. And I know you're asking them because we feel like we have to. But I think it's also like the kind of the sort of very subtle thing that happens, because we're like led to believe that we have to operate at this like, almost ridiculously high level that no one else has to like go to in order to get anything done, where it might have been handed to folks.
Yeah, this is not a question that I see other aspiring booksellers or entrepreneurs having to ask, like where they get their funding from and what are the values of the bank that they took the money from. And this is. I
wish, you know what? I wish that there were more Black-owned banks. But the bottom line is the ones that are there have like really teeny weeny little like assets. And that's like the legacy of this frigging country.
Yeah. So my personal workaround so that I wouldn't have to align with, so I wouldn't have to take anybody's money was to crowdfund. And I've seen that the last two projects that you've done have had some component of crowdfunding. Another project that you're working on that I feel like is not being talked enough about is Bronxlandia. That I want you to tell everybody like what Bronxlandia is and your vision for that. But I've seen a crowdfunding component for your latest projects. It's the route that I decided to go to get my funding because I was like, okay, if I want this, if I truly believe that the Lip Bar is here to serve the existing Bronx population and, however, the transplants, if I wanted to remain authentic, if I believe that my people can sustain this, that means that I have to take a bet that my people can build it. So that's why I decided to go the crowdfunding route. And if I didn't meet my crowdfunding goal, then for me, that's market data. That means that maybe we can't.
Would you have not done it if you didn't meet your goal?
If my only option was to take developer money, no.
Most developers, it's not their money, it's bank money. just saying.
So I understand. So I understand how the financing ecosystem works. I know why, and I'm not talking about all developers. All the building I'm in is built by a developer. There's a new wave of developers coming into the South Bronx. And what I've observed is like they'll pick a few homegrown entrepreneurs. They'll splash graffiti on the project and call it culture. It's edgy. Oh my God, there's bacon, egg, and cheese. Have you ever heard of this? It's exploitative. It's creepy to me. Mm-hmm. So yes, while the money from the developers does actually, physically come from the banks, we're promoting these rents that are like $5,000 for a for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom. We know that that's not for this existing community. So it did matter to me who I rented from. That's why I didn't open the Lip Bar in 6 months from the time I had the idea. It took me 5 years to do it because I was gonna wait out for the right partner. And that's not like to toot myself on the back, because it's something that I still navigate now that everybody has their DEI initiatives. And this is not just real estate development. This is in publishing also, the industry that I'm in, where I have to look at every opportunity that comes my way. And I'm going to look at your Twitter. I want to see everything that you've ever said. I have a person on my staff that their one job is to like research, people's, how their mission aligns with ours. And like, I do care deeply about that. And it scares me that, I had the, I was able to galvanize the community in a pretty unique way. My personality, sprinkle some hip hop on it. I rapped my crowdfund pitch. Not everybody can do that. So it's like, maybe, Majora Carter, Noel Santos, Amaudis, John Gray, we're some of the special ones, but how do like regular people, how do we bring them up with us? And is the only answer to just take money from anywhere, no matter where those dollars come from?
I mean, I feel like it's more about what are you actually doing that's helping people see themselves as agents of change in their own lives. So if it means that, because I'm gonna be taking some money from banks. I hope that I get to the point where that absolutely happens. Yes. And I'm going to build some really amazing things that allow all types of folks, from our communities and yes, even from those that are out there, because I think we do need to create more, the part of the reason around gentrification is just there's not enough supply for the demand that's out there. So we need to build more, period.
That goes back to goes back to your mission around home ownership. Like we're renting, I lease the Lip Bar.
Right.
What goes to say that I'm not building up this neighborhood, and then when my lease is up in 10 years, that Starbucks is going to be at 131 Alexander Avenue?
That's true.
And I don't operate in from a place of fear. So like I'm doing the work. I'm gonna ride this out. Right. I have faith that that my landlord is invested in me the way I'm invested in in this community. I try not to get too romantic about the physical space.
Don't.
But it's scary. Even when you're in it, even when you think you found a way, which for me it was crowdfunding and just avoiding even having to, it was my way of trying to stay clean.
So what is this? So I don't understand this thing with like, do you feel less authentic because you're doing well? I mean, I'm really struggling with this.
Absolutely not. I don't feel less authentic. Like I am who I am. I credit my authenticity. I credit my success to my authenticity. I don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for the fact that I was able to reach my community. The people who come into my store every day and keep us going and order from us online, it's because they relate to me. You can get the same exact product from Amazon for much cheaper. There is something that drives people to support this space, and that means so that like I see our impact on display every day.
Right.
But I do think about my part in the ecosystem, and I do avoid certain opportunities because I don't trust that these big corporate interests have my community's best interests at heart.
I don't disagree.
And I probably not. I'm not.
That's why I want to be a developer. I mean, that's why I became one, because I was tired of watching the way that it worked. Now, and I think about the kind of projects that were dismissed. I was trying to build home ownership for low-income people, trying to create, incubators and support systems for new entrepreneurs here. That was not acceptable, not acceptable. Mm-hmm. For someone that looked like this, essentially saying, to our city and to the nonprofit world, I think I got a better idea for how our communities can actually develop in ways that are more supportive, of their economic healing and recovery. That actually, without a cute little DEI initiative that y'all feel like is a good thing, just give us opportunities and possibility for our own way to succeed. Keep our homes, create value in our own community so dollars and beauty circulate here. That's all I'm trying to do. And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. I know not everybody's going to want to stick around. I know there'll be others who consider me, they have, the great gentrifying force of our entire community. It's not the predatory speculators, not the, nothing like that, not the government policies that literally make it difficult for folks, in our communities to actually create more economic prosperity for themselves. We're the problem. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is scary. It's something that I'm still navigating. I don't have a personal resolution. I don't have any closure on the subject. But I thank you so much for writing this book to help me kind of navigate what's at play here. I'm thinking about, I've always said I don't want to be a homeowner. I like the flexibility of renting, but now I have a deeper understanding of, why it's so important to my community. So I'm not at this doesn't have to be a conversation. I don't have to worry about what's gonna happen at the end of my 10-year lease, or if Starbucks is going to replace me. And I'm so grateful that I'm in the position to have that option. What are your hopes? What is your vision for Bronxlandia and these new real estate developments?
So Bronxlandia is, my dream, to restore this beautiful, historic rail station, into a premier event hall, that'll rival anything, downtown and Brooklyn, wherever. And it becomes the kind of place to sort of Hunts Point used to be known for all of its dance halls and concert halls. I want to bring that back. I really do, because I want to be who's the next, but I don't care if it's Jimi Hendrix, the next, Fat Joe, who is it that's coming out of here? And I think it's going to happen, because we're going to build that capacity, and actually we're working with folks from our community to actually help make that happen. And guess what? People are going to be invested in this and sharing in the revenues. And that's really different from the way a lot of other folks work. And I'm really excited about that future, and also of just, I feel really grateful that I've been put in a position, to show what's possible. And I feel because I can compare myself to all the other real estate developers, the mail and pale ones that literally do, that sort of have their pick of projects, within, the city and in the country. And, and I'm we don't do much when it comes, if I just compare it that way. But I know that looking at how we've developed, whether it's the Boogie Down grind, focusing on Bronxlandia and other projects that we're working on. And you will be seeing, mixed use, mixed income projects, around New York City coming from me within the next few years, that will have home ownership, that will have local business development, and that will actually create the kind of economic cycle for, opportunities for wealth creation and generational wealth for our communities.
I love the examples that you give in the book of projects that you've like. This exists.
Yes. Yeah.
This is not some utopia.
No.
I can't wait for the day where this is like no longer even a question. Like I have, I can just go to the real estate developer that is part of my community, so I don't even have to ask.
Or you could be one. Or you could be one. Like, why? I mean, that's the thing. It's like we often in our communities, we're like, somebody should do that. How is that working for us?
I picked my struggle.
Agreed. But listen,
I picked my struggle. Real estate. I'm gonna leave you to the real estate developing. But I picked my struggle, which was literacy. And that's a big enough problem to tackle. I can't wait until I hope that in my lifetime I get to see the day where entrepreneurs and the talent that we want to retain doesn't even have to ask these questions. There are people who are invested in our community, who live here, and work here, and their children go to school here. People who are actually vested in our communities actually are owning these buildings, so I can rent from them. And this is not even a question. But in the meantime, there's some immediate needs. Like there's some immediate needs. And you use the term phlegm. I don't know if it's pronounced phlegm. It's an acronym.
Yes.
Phlegm basically
poverty level
represents all those it represents all of these businesses that we see, the check cashing places, the liquor stores, the things that kind of
continue poverty and drain money from our own communities.
Yes.
You mean those
dollars don't stay in our communities.
Yeah.
The check cashing place, that money comes, it comes in, the money comes into our community, and it's drained out of our community. In the meantime, there's some immediate needs. People are hungry, which I came face to face with. I mean, I always knew that food insecurity and housing insecurity was an issue that was wrecking our community. But I got to see it face to face during COVID, when we shut down and our neighbors were, they started these food lines and stuff like that. And I'm like coming face with the people who actually need these services. Mm-hmm. So do you suggest that we start diverting money from those types of projects that are serving immediate needs and pouring them into retaining talent and creating lifestyle projects?
What I would like to see is a more deliberate approach by the billions and billions of dollars in philanthropic and government money that keeps pouring it in the same exact way to the same sort of crappy results, that literally kind of, look, all COVID did was just sort of highlight the things that have always been in our community, which is a very serious misunderstanding of how we can actually use funds and financings to actually solve some problems. But that's not what it's meant to do. That's not how it rolls, right? Because we're still dealing with this. It's like there's all these studies that show like, oh my God, X amount of money would cure, the child prostitution and stuff like that. And, and it's basically less than what the fashion industry does for just jeans. Okay. Yep. So it's not,
they want to pick on that one thing that's not really the driving force.
No. My point is that there's the way that those issues that are dealt with, the kind of things that you're talking about, the food lines that happen in our communities, that allegedly there are things that service, whether it's the nonprofit, industrial complex, government, whatever. But yet all the billions of dollars are spent, but those things continue to happen, right? Those places stay economically stagnant. Like what we also need is like a serious relooking at why are they economically stagnant when we know good and daggone well they haven't been working. Why are we still doing the same thing to the same results, watching people continue to dive into poverty? And again, those communities become so vulnerable that all it takes is someone else to come in and essentially sweep them aside. If and benefit themselves through the developments that are there. That's poverty level economic maintenance. So you keep them hanging just enough, but not really thriving. So again, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But what I do know is that what I see a lot of has not been working, and it hasn't changed. So we keep doing it. So yeah, what this book is an opportunity for folks to consider that maybe we should at least look a little internally at our own communities and rethink like who's doing the development and consider themselves like part of a trend that could literally be the economic driver of our own communities. That's really all this is about. And just consider it. And I gave other examples from around the country and actually also Canada, of folks that have decided to do that. And, you're one of them as well. I mean, you're here and there's plenty of us that are doing it.
I completely subscribe to, I want to see my community progress.
Yeah.
I like nice things. I want to see, I just wish it feels like we have to make a choice. Do we, how we, and I'm talking about me as on the front line, not the greater system, the economic, and not the greater like financing and political system. I mean, like just us on the front line. It's like we have to
do what you can. Right.
Yeah, we do. I do what I can.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like it's enough, but I completely.
So do you want to stop?
Say it again.
Do you want to stop?
Oh no.
I mean, is it?
I'm coming to work tomorrow.
I know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like just because you do what you can. You do it with all the love that you can in your heart, all the resources you have to put behind it, and you set yourself up so that others can see it and be inspired and supported by that example.
Yeah, I 100% subscribe to the ideology that we need to reclaim our community. 100%. I'm inspired. I wish it was happening faster, but
of course.
I wish we could beat outside forces to the punch. So I'm doing what I can.
Right.
But I do believe that we have the power to, and we have the resources right in our community to bring all these projects and homegrown talent, to its self-actualization and to full fruition. I do think that we have that, and it exists here.
Yeah. And you know what? It's like to bring back the closer with the old environmentalist in me. Best time to plant a tree, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The second best time, today. I can't get my panties in a bunch over things I can't change. I can't. But what I can do is just pray for the strength and the wisdom to keep going and hopefully inspire others, because I'm getting old and tired. And before I go,
you are not.
Yes, I am. And get other people to think like, okay, we can do this too. Like, we don't have to devalue our own communities up here. And then we do it with how we spend our money.
I'm so hopeful. I'm so hopeful. And the book, toward the end of the book, after I picked it up, the taste that it left in my mouth was that of hope. That somebody will see your story, will see my story, will see, this new generation of, yes, you're part of this generation, no matter how old you want to claim you are.
That's true, because I look at you.
this generation of entrepreneurs, of developers, of talent, talent across industries. I want to see this continue. I wish it was happening at a different rate so that we could know some of the more immediate what I believe is more immediate needs, But I want to see this continue to grow from the efforts that we're doing, and I want to see it like meet in the middle somewhere. So thank you. That was my takeaway from the book. Was it gave me a roadmap. It gave me a roadmap of you know, how where we need to plant those seeds at. So I'm gonna come to work tomorrow and continue on my journey. I can't say I'm gonna be taking developer money tomorrow, but I do believe that you know, something has to change, and maybe I need to be thinking bigger.
Yep. Because if we're not thinking bigger, somebody will be doing it for us, and that hasn't worked for us well. So.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope this it was. I don't know if I should call it a discussion, a debate, or what, because I'm still showing up to Thanksgiving, and we could continue this conversation. I don't know if James is making a goose or a pheasant for this year, but I'll be there to continue this discussion. I hope this sparks discussions within your communities, at your Thanksgiving dinner tables, and I hope that everybody picks up.
Awesome. Yes.
Tanaja, you want to drop the link to where people can?
Oh yeah, and does your link give people the offer that we have? Is if you buy 10 books, I can zoom into your buy 10 books. I can zoom into your by March 1st. You buy 10 books by March 1st, 10 or more. You can buy more for your book group, for your church group, for your whatever. And I'll zoom in, and you could debate, discuss, you know, get all whatever. Nobody picks my brain. I think that's the most disgusting phrase in the world, but I'm happy to share everything I have with you. But you got to buy the 10 books before March 1st. Just show proof, and then we'll and it doesn't have to be before March 1st. You've got the rest of the year to come up with a time for me to do it.
Got it. So please take advantage of that author. We want this book to do numbers. We want this conversation, no matter what side of the coin you're on. We want this conversation to remain alive. We want the work to stay alive. Tanaza dropped the link to where you can buy it to support the Lip Bar, but I want you to buy this book from wherever books are sold.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Majora, for
thank you, darling,
for your time. I love you dearly, and I continue to be inspired by you. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you all.
Yeah.